Welcome to Tinfoil Alley. Well, in the even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and again column, we've got this one. And believe it or not, this is from CNN. The title of the article is Mayor Eric Adams might be the fall guy for New York Democrats' potential big losses next week. Democratic officials and strategists in New York tell CNN they're bracing for what could be a stunning losses in the governor's race and in contests for as many as 4 U.S. House seats, largely in the suburbs. With crime dominating the headlines and airwaves, multiple Democrats watching these races closely are pointing to New York City Mayor Eric Adams, accusing him of overhyping the issue and playing into the right-wing narratives in ways that may have helped set the party up for a disaster on Tuesday. He was an essential validator in the city to make their attacks seem more legit and less partisan, said one Democratic operative working on campaigns in New York, who asked not to be named as compromised current clients. Other Democrats argue he has it backwards. While they accuse Republicans of political ploys they call cynical, racist, and taking advantage of a situation fostered by the pandemic, they insist candidates would be in better shape if they had followed Adams' lead in speaking to the fear and frustrations voters feel. But going into Election Day, New York Democrats worry about a double whammy from how they struggle to address crime. Swing voters turned off by Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul and suburban House Democrats go to vote Republican, while base Democrats in the city, dejected by talk of how awful things are, don't turn out at all. Crime today has been compared to the 80s and 90s, and the fact of the matter is that crime is lower now than it was then, said Crystal Hudson, a Democratic New York City councilwoman from Brooklyn. That's emboldened the right to use crime as their narrative and put Democrats in a bad spot for these midterm elections. Representative Lee Zeldin, Hochul's GOP opponent, has taken to regularly invoking Adams on the campaign trail, to the point that some Democratic operatives have grimly joked that Zeldin could just run clips of Adams talking about crime as his closing ads. There are national ripples. Democrat groups like Democratic Governors Association are moving in millions of dollars to prop up Hochul in a deep blue state instead of spending that on tight races elsewhere, with Vice President Kamala Harris flying in on Thursday in one of her own last campaign stops, and President Joe Biden heading to Westchester County, north of New York City, on Sunday to rally with the governor. Republicans, meanwhile, are seizing opportunities to pad potential House majority by targeting seats that Democrats have been counting on as backstops. Adams was elected last year on a tough-talking, tough-on-crime message, and then braced as such a hero among Democrat leaders that rumors circulated he might be eyeing a 2024 presidential run himself. In office, he's often talked about the bad shape the city is in, including citing statistics he says demonstrate connections between the rise in crime and a 2019 progressive-led state law change that barred judges from setting cash bail for all those but the most serious offenses. Multiple top Democrats argue Democrats have used this credibility to buttress Hochul, whom allies point out is a tricky political spot, talking about crime in New York City as a 64-year-old white woman from western New York, instead of loudly pushing the governor to call a special session of the legislature to roll back more of the new bail laws. Hochul also seemed to be caught surprised by the attacks and unsure how to defend her record, with several elected officials and operatives saying she appeared to be balancing between different factions of the party rather than setting a firm agenda of her own. That's fed an increasingly tense relationship with the campaign's final weeks. Though Adams recently appeared with Hochul at both an official government event announcing she allocates state money to pay for overtime for police patrolling the subways, and a campaign stop in Queens as she seeks to prove out voters she's taking crime seriously. Adams has also shifted to blaming the media for sensationalizing the crime problem. Appearing on CNN this morning on Friday, Hochul said there's never been a governor or mayor in New York with a strong relationship as the one she has with Adams. While she acknowledged that violent crime is up and the issue was rooted in voters' sincere fears, she said Republicans were not having a conversation about the real solutions. She cited her record of getting more cops and cameras on the street and help with the mentally ill, and Zeldin's opposition to gun control. Crime has been a problem, she said. I understand that. Let's talk the real answers and not just give everybody all these platitudes. The article goes on, but that gives you the general gist of it. And I grew up in Washington, D.C., or just outside of Washington, D.C., and I remember as a teenager, we used to get on the train, the Amtrak, and go to New York on a Saturday. We'd get on the train at like 5 in the morning, ride up there, spend the day in New York City, go see the sights and do New York City stuff, and then get back on the train about 5 o'clock in the evening, come home. You could ride up there for like $19 or something. It was I mean, it was a good deal. And when we started doing this, it was pre Rudy Giuliani. Now, a few years went past that after Rudy Giuliani got elected. An opportunity. I went to New York for a couple days just to, see the sights. Everybody should go there at least once. And I was amazed at the difference in that city. I got to see with my own eyes what the difference is one man can make by instituting the right policies. And of course, they called Giuliani every name in the book. He was a racist. He was a bigot. Blah, blah, blah. But what he did worked. And if you listen to the Democrats, they're still kind of in denial there is even a crime issue. They know there's a crime issue. They just don't want you to believe there's a crime issue. But we all get to see it on the news every night. Grown men beating up elderly ladies in the street. I mean, it's just a couple days ago, a man walked up to a jogger, in broad daylight, grabbed her by the throat, and raped her right there. That's out of control, folks. That's anarchy. And truth is, if they catch the guy, he'll be right back out on the street because they're not going to give him bail. They're going to give him a slap on the wrist. They're probably going to downgrade the charge to, sexual assault. This mess has gotten crazy, folks. We got a huge mental illness problem that needs to be, we need to go back to the way it used to be done. And these people, if they're dangerous, they need to be institutionalized. And they don't need to be turned back out ever again because they can't be cured. You give them medicine, they won't take it. So it'd be like the old days. We'll send them off to the funny farm and they can weave baskets and paint flowers and live a happy life while the state drugs them up to keep them calm. I know that sounds mean and that sounds callous and nasty, but it was the way it was done and it worked. And to tell you the God's honest truth, when these people are drugged up to keep them calm, they don't know no better. What you got to understand is the people are sick and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just they got dealt a raw hand in life. And I hate it for them. But we can't let them run the streets, raping and killing, just so we can satisfy in our hearts that we were being fair. Because eventually you come into a situation that you have what's fair and what's right. And you have to side on what's right. What's right isn't always fair. And that's what the modern Democratic Party cannot grasp. And that's why they will always fail. Because they side on fair. They'll say, in a situation you can take two people, what's fair for one might not be fair for the other. But what's right is always right. We have to have some semblance of morality to maintain a civil society. I'm sorry. That's just the facts. And back to this, I read you the original article on this, but the article I actually found this under was Democrats are already preparing to blame the black guy if Kathy Hochul loses. And what a lot of people don't understand, Democrats were the original racists. Democrats were the party of the slave trade. They were the party of Jim Crow. They were the party of all them people you saw spraying black people with fire hoses in the 60s. Those were all Democrats. It's the Republicans that brought us the Civil Rights Act. The Democrats fought against for years. If you don't believe me, do this. Bring up a picture of the last, 10 Congresses. If you do a Google search, you can find a picture of the Congress. They take a picture every session when they're elected. The Republican side does, the Democratic side does, and they do one all together. And just look at the pictures. And you look at the Republican picture, you'll see black, white, Hispanic, man, woman, Asian, Indian, all kinds of races and sex, in sexes and a very diverse picture if you look at it. There's a majority of them still white, yes, because a majority of the country is white. It's the law of averages. Then look at the picture of the Democratic Party. Why, you will see some women in there and some people of color. You'll notice the ratio's not near as even as it is over in the Republican Party. And if you look at the leadership of the Democratic Party, it's all white folks. All angry, mean, nasty white folks. And if you think they care about a person of color, they care about them just as much as they need them to get in power. Other than that, they don't care about them. If you're a person of color listening to this, and you're of an age, let's say you're 40, 50 years old, look back over your life and say, what have the Democrats ever done for me? They keep black people cooped up in the ghettos, in these cities that are crime-riddled, and they're all ran by Democrats. Virtually every major city in this country is run by a Democrat. City council's full of Democrats. The media's full of Democrats. And has been for years. And I assure you, things have not gotten better. If anything, they've gotten a whole lot worse. You see these old people, old white folks, they come out to the parts of towns where all the minorities live 6 months before every election. They promise you the moon and the stars. They promise you they're going to get you more food stamps. They promise you they're going to get you more rent assistance. And it's those evil Republicans that's keeping their thumb on you, keeping you down. They run around the ghetto for 6 months until election day, promising everything under the sun. And then once they get elected, you don't see them for 3 more years. People, wake up. You're being used. And now they've just gotten comfortable with the fact that you're going to fall for it hook, line, and sinker. And they don't hardly bother coming to the ghetto anymore. They just say, oh, they're going to vote for us anyway. But that one's about to bite them in the ass. They've been steadily losing the Hispanic vote. And they have actually been losing some of the black vote. But they've lost a lot of the Hispanic vote. Rush Limbaugh used to say that if the Democratic Party would just lose 10% of the inner city black vote, they'd never win another election. And I think he's right. But people, get off the Democrat plantation. Use your head. Vote your pocketbook. Vote for your children's well-being. And I can promise you, your daughter's well-being isn't whether she can get an abortion when she's 14 without your knowledge. No, your daughter's well-being is she gets a good education so she does better than you in life. That should be your goal. And sit back and honestly look at it and ask yourself, who's going to make that possible? And you know what? This election goes by, and I don't know if Zeldin's going to win governor of New York or not. But if he does, watch, they'll hammer old Mayor Adams because he didn't toe the party line, and the media won't say a word about it. Hell, they'll help him because that's what they expect. They think they know better than you, and if you'll just toe the line, they'll throw you a little crumb every now and again. But think how you deliver that vote, folks. It's important. It does matter. And y'all have a fine day.